Welcome to episode 123 of the BCF ORG podcast, The Business of Business. I'm Brian Fisher. This podcast series focuses on the various subjects and topics to help you run a successful, profitable business, and it's targeted to business owners and C-suite executives, but anyone interested in business can benefit. It reflects my 34 years as a business owner and subsequent years as a business mentor and consultant. They're approximately 15 minutes long, so you can listen while commuting. Hopefully, you'll find one or two takeaways to implement per episode. In the previous episode, 122, our guest was Jimmy Rios, discussing decoding the mystery of business credit. Today's episode discusses scaling and delegation with Kasim Aslam. Based out of Scottsdale, Arizona, Kasim Aslam is the co-founder of Pareto Talent and Driven Mastermind. Kasim is a serial entrepreneur who has built multiple 7- and 8-figure businesses, including 2 successful exits. Named one of the top 50 digital marketing thought leaders in the U.S., Kasim brings deep expertise in scaling businesses, delegation, and hiring world-class talent. He's also the author of You versus Google, a #1 international bestseller in marketing and advertising. He built the biggest and best Google Ads agency in the world, which he sold in October of 2022. He co-founded Driven Mastermind, an exclusive, invite-only community for high-performing entrepreneurs. Most recently, he launched a recruiting agency for executive assistants, ParetoTalent.com. Kasim is a college dropout, entrepreneur, author, and proud front-row dad. Let's welcome Kasim Aslam. Kasim, welcome to the BCF ORG podcast, The Business of Business.
Thanks for having me, Brian. I appreciate you.
Thanks for joining us today. Kasim, I'm always interested in people's stories. What's your background in becoming the co-founder of Pareto Talent and Driven Mastermind?
Oh, golly. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been building businesses for 20 years. I've built 6 multi-million-dollar businesses. I've had 2 exits. And now I'm trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up.
This episode's topic is scaling and delegation. Why is delegation the single most important skill for an entrepreneur?
Entrepreneurs are the least scalable part of their own business, and very often in the beginning, the most valuable. And so if you want to put yourself in a position to not just free your own time, but also begin to replicate yourself in meaningful ways, I think the only way I know to do that, especially in one foul swoop, is through delegation.
Yeah, like we were talking earlier, for me, when I started my business and once it started to grow, the hardest part for me was the delegation.
I think that's the hardest part for everybody. The interesting thing about effective delegation is effective delegation assumes that you have somebody effective to delegate to. So the prerequisite there is generally speaking where people fail. More often than not, in my experience, somebody says, "Oh, I tried delegating and it didn't work." And when you really dig into that story, what that means is that I didn't have the right person to delegate to. Entrepreneurs are taught to hire people like commodities. And I actually think that's a near ubiquitous truth. If you take any business book off the shelf and you open it up, and these are from the greats, right? Like, Covey, Maxwell, Dalio, it doesn't matter. We speak about and teach people to hire, manage, train, and fire human beings as though they're commodities. And what that does is it puts you in the wrong frame of mind. Everybody's trying to get the most amount of human for the least amount of money. The issue is the human is the one participant in the business activity that is not a commodity by definition. And so if you delegate to a commoditized human, that's the punch in, punch out, doesn't care guy. They're obviously going to suck. Key is to go out and find a miracle. And they're available. They're everywhere. As a matter of fact, I think every human being has the opportunity to articulate themselves as a miracle if they're properly drawn out. But when you find what I call Pareto talent, which is, it refers to the Pareto distribution, 20% of your input is responsible for 80% of your output. When you find those people, delegation becomes a joy. And very often when people think they're delegating, what they're really doing is they're managing. You know, they're watching somebody do the task and they're helping them do the task. With somebody, a true Pareto talent, You just give them the input. Here's the money I want to spend, the resources you have available to you, the stakeholders, the other employees, vendors, contractors, etc. Here's everything you have to start with. Here's my desired end result. This is what I want at the end of the day. And then what happens in the middle is none of your business. As a matter of fact, you, Mr. or Mrs. Entrepreneur, are probably going to ruin that process. So I call it the black box of delegation. What goes in, up to you. What comes out, up to you. Everything in the middle, none of your damn business. And if you've hired right, you should have somebody that can execute on that, not just well, but actually better than you.
Well, that leads right into this next question, and you probably answered a lot of it as far as what's the key to growing a company?
Talent acquisition. People systemize and build a funnel for everything in their business except talent acquisition. And then they treat talent, again, to, maybe beat a dead horse, but they treat talent like a commodity that they can go to the store and buy. And everybody's like, oh, I'll just go to Upwork and get a web designer. Go to Indeed and put a job posting out there for a client manager. And it's the exact opposite paradigm. Your most important role as an entrepreneur when you're growing a business is talent acquisition. It's more important than anything else because you're talking about, it's a meta understanding. If you think to yourself, I need to make sure everything gets done well. Well, who's doing the gets done? And that's the question. You're not doing the do, you're doing the who that does the do. Does that make sense? You're finding the people that are going to execute on these endeavors. And so it doesn't matter what the endeavor is. Your job isn't to do the job. Your job is to find the person that does the job. And what entrepreneurs don't realize is, and this is going to be an unpopular opinion, Brian, and I might shut some people off, but the key is to pay more. Pay more, give more, let people work on a semi-flexible schedule, let them work from home if they need to, treat them like real-life human beings, giving them meaningful work. And when you pay more, I tell everybody, pay 10% more than the high water mark. And you think, oh gosh, I can't afford that. And that means that people don't understand the leverage that is Pareto distribution, because when you pay 10% more, you don't get 10, 20, 30% more. You get 10 times more, 100 times more. When I sold Solutions 8, I sold for an 8-figure sum. One employee managed 40% of my revenue. And most entrepreneurs hear that and they're like, oh, no, I'd never do that. That's a key man problem. You need to distribute the risk. Well, when you distribute the risk, think of a hierarchy as a pyramid. The top of your hierarchy is the highest output. Distributing the risk means you're flattening the hierarchy, which means you're diminishing your high-end output. So don't run away from the Pareto distribution, run into it, run towards it. And that was the benefit. I built a 100-person organization, or near 100. We had 40% margins in an industry that aims at 15. So I was able to massively outpace my entire industry because I had people that were way better than anybody else. That was the one question I got during due diligence more than any other was, where do you find these people? And most entrepreneurs they actually don't want it. They don't want competence. They're afraid of it. And so instead they go find mediocre people, manageable people. But the problem with manageable people is they need to be managed.
Boy, that is spot on. And A players want to be with A players too.
Yeah, winners want to win. That's exactly right.
Absolutely. We're speaking with Kasim, co-founder of Pareto Talent and Driven Mastermind. Kasim, why should you always be part of a mastermind?
Oh, man. I always want to be the dumbest, poorest person in every room I'm in. And if that's not true, you're probably in the wrong room or you're just ungrowing. Which is okay. I actually think that there are people that reach that point in their career where they're not looking to grow, to earn, to build. They're looking to give. And if that's you, then maybe you should own a mastermind or have a mastermind. But if you're on a growth path, and it doesn't have to be called mastermind, by the way. I think where people tend to get hung up is it's a semantic issue. Have any community that challenges you. It could be your church. Could be the Rotary Club. It doesn't matter. As long as there are people there that hold you to a higher standard. I think it was Jim Rohn that said you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And what's nice about a mastermind is you can actually pay money to be in a room with better people and increase that sum, increase that aggregate average.
Kasim, why was going completely broke the best thing that ever happened to you as an entrepreneur?
Taught me what money really was. I started my business when I was 20. And I made more money than I had ever made before. And I bought a house on a hill and I bought the big fancy car and I was always picking up the check. And at 22, the economy collapsed around my ears. And I learned very quickly that I didn't own any of those things. The bank did. Foreclosure, repossession, multi-6 figures in debt. And it was the most important entrepreneurial lesson I've ever learned. how critical liquidity is to the entrepreneurial endeavor and what that means. Because if you have a house, let's say you have $1 million house, you don't have $1 million, you have a house that's technically worth $1 million, pending the whole world agreeing and participating in that fantasy of yours. $1 million is only $1 million if it's in your hands and it's liquid. And business owners tend to bank on assets and think about them as reserves when they're not. And so learning about the game of money was really critical for me, and I'm glad it happened early.
Hey, Kasim, what results or lessons learned have you seen with businesses and individuals that have implemented your recommendations?
My favorite thing in life is to watch people providing meaningful work to those in emerging nations. I actually think that that's probably the biggest impact that we can have as business owners. There's an anthropological impact when you take somebody in a country that doesn't have a social safety net and you pay them more than they'd make domestically, you let them work from home. Just the data that on parents being at home for children, lower gang involvement rate, lower drug rate, lower teen pregnancy rates, just by having mom and dad present, even if they're working, present. And then the impact that they would have on their own, whatever microeconomy exists and is built around them. So I love teaching entrepreneurs to hire internationally. And for people who are like, oh, I tried outsourcing, it didn't work, my ask to them is, well, what did you outsource? It was probably grunt work. You ask somebody to do a bunch of data entry or a bunch of outbound phone calls. There are truly brilliant people throughout the entire rest of the world, and they have a fraction of the opportunities that people in the States have. So when you look internationally, you actually have access to a broader labor pool higher up in the hierarchical structure. Because the top talent in the US, if you're a small business, they don't want to work for you. They want to work for Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook. They want to work for a startup that's offering stock options. They want to start their own business, right? Like, we don't get the creme de la creme here. We can't afford them. Because God bless our country, we won. We built this amazing, almost utopia. And if you don't believe that, I don't think you have a cosmic view of history. Like, what we have here is extraordinary. And it sucks to be an employer. Nobody has to work here. It's not a necessity. You can get away with a lot. Go to places where people are grateful to work. Because most employers have never experienced gratitude. And when you do, it's an extraordinary change. It's a massive paradigm shift.
That's really an interesting point. We're speaking with Kasim, co-founder of Pareto Talent and Driven Mastermind. Kasim, is there anything I've not asked that you'd like to add?
No, I think you've nailed it, Brian. I really appreciate being on your show. Thanks for the service that you provide other people, and I appreciate the listeners for tuning in.
Oh, thank you, Kasim. Kasim, how can people get in contact with you?
They can go to my hot link is kasim.me, Kasim.me. All my businesses, all my socials. I shoot a YouTube video every day. That's probably where I'm most active.
Kasim, thank you for joining us today on the BCF ORG podcast, The Business of Business.
Thanks for having me, Brian. I appreciate you, sir.
My sincere thanks to Kasim for joining us today. Managing the performance and future direction of your company are two of the most important things you do as a leader. This podcast is on YouTube and over 20 podcast directories. In search, type BCF ORG. Be sure to leave a space between BCF and ORG. Don't forget to like, subscribe, or follow the podcast. I'm here to help you. If you'd like to reach out to me for business mentoring or consulting, help you with a podcast, schedule a speaking engagement, or potentially be a guest like Kasim, please go to bcforg.com. There's a red Contact Us button in the middle of the homepage. All the podcasts are available by clicking on the website podcast page in the reference bar. These podcasts will be released the first and third Tuesday each month. In the next episode, 124, our guest will be Aaron DiBenedetto discussing AI sales automation. In business, running a successful, profitable business is the ultimate scorecard. You are never done and can always be better. It tends to be more fun than work, frustrating at times, but can be very rewarding. From BCF ORG Corp., I'm Brian Fisher, wishing you the best. Thanks.